Jamie.
Amen. Certainly we're thankful to the Almighty God who blessed us again to be able to come and to study another portion of His holy and divine word. It's an honor as well as it's a privilege to be able to stand before you and preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. Certainly that song is always an encouragement to me and hopefully to all of us, because we sing that song. There's some very precious words that you might say that are in that song. Home of the soul. Our soul is going to need an eternal resting place. And we certainly want to be in heaven. So every time I hear that song, that makes me think about this world is not my home, and we realize that we want a home for the soul. Not this body right here is only going to be here just for a little while, and we need an eternal resting place after this. We're thankful so much for all the ones who have participated this far in carrying on the service. I want to thank Tavion for that scripture reading. I want to thank Brother Cyrus Jr. for that prayer. And I want to thank Brother Simpson for those wonderful hymns. Thank you for being here. Your presence is always a source of encouragement. See that you have made it through the holidays, and good that you're here. And certainly we're looking forward to this new year as well. So 2020 made me think about Barbara Walters, think about 2020, that show. Then think about a vision, eyesight, vision. I think that probably would be our theme, hopefully next year, 2020. We should always have a vision, because the Bible said, where there's no vision, the people perish. So let's always have that vision to do more for the Lord each day of our lives. This morning, I want to invite your attention to the book of John, chapter 18. St. John, that is, chapter 18, verses number 36 through verses number 40. St. John, chapter 18, verses 36 through 40. And it reads as, Jesus answered, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then would my servants fight, that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now is my kingdom not from hence. Pilate therefore said unto him, art thou a king then? Jesus answered, thou sayest that I am a king. To this end was I born. And for this cause came I into the world, that I should bear witness unto the truth. Everyone that is of the truth heareth my voice. Pilate said unto him, what is truth? And when he had said this, he went out again unto the Jews, and said unto them, I find in him no fault at all. But ye have a custom, that I should release unto you one at the Passover. Will ye therefore that I release unto you the King of the Jews? Then cried they all again, saying, not this man, but Barabbas. Now Barabbas was a robber. I want to use for a subject, give us Barabbas. Give us Barabbas. You know, that's the kind of world that many times when people are of the world, they want something that's of the world. Barabbas was a criminal. Barabbas was one that led a revolt against probably Rome, and that's the reason that he probably was in a prison. He rather had an insurrection, if you will, raise up a revolt against the Romans. And this was a man that was fighting, and it wasn't Robin Hood. He was a man that was fighting against the Romans. So here, this is a man that they knew was a robber and was a killer. But instead, they wanted somebody that they had in their mind to kill, and that was Jesus. I know that this was predicted. I know that in the Bible, Jesus this was already the plan in God's plan. Even when you look at Psalms chapter 22. Let's look at that for him. It was already in the plan that Jesus would die on the cross. That was in the plan. When you look at Psalms chapter 22 in verses number 1. Psalms 22 in verse number 1, and also Isaiah 53 in verse number 7. We know that the prophet had already predicted that Jesus would die on the cross. That's already been said by the prophet and already been said in the book of Psalms. Psalm 22 in verse number 1. What does the Bible say?
My God, my God.
My God, my God. Isn't that something amazing about that? This is years, hundreds of years before Jesus was even crucified, and yet David is saying here, my God, this is what Jesus said on the cross. That's how I know the Bible is true, because the evidence of this quote right here is years before Jesus was even on the cross. But when he got on the cross, this is what he said on the cross. Read.
Why hast thou forsaken me?
Why hast thou forsaken me? Read.
Why art thou so far from helping me?
Why art thou so far from helping me? Although David might have been not even understand how profound what he was really saying. David was probably saying this, but not understanding it's referring really to Christ. That's how we know the Bible is real and true.
Right.
Read.
And from the words of my Lord.
And from the words of my Lord, look at Isaiah 53. And round about verse number 7, Isaiah 53 and verse number 7. We're talking here about how we know that Jesus were to go to the cross, and really Pilate didn't have no power really of sending Jesus to the cross. It was in the will of God even before the foundation of the world. Psalm Isaiah 53, and look at verse number 7. What does the Bible say?
He was oppressed and he was afflicted.
He was oppressed and he was afflicted. What?
Yet he opened not his
Yet he opened not his mouth. Read.
He was led as a lamb.
He was led as a lamb. Read. They say a lamb, when he's getting ready to be sheared, he don't even open his mouth. But if you were to grab a goat, you'll know the difference. Read.
And as a sheep before a shearer.
And as a sheep before the shearers. Read.
So he opened not his mouth.
So he opened not his mouth. So Jesus didn't try to defend himself. And let's go back to the text and look at how Jesus, and when he was talking to Pilate and talking to Annas and talking to Caiaphas, he wasn't really trying to defend himself, because Jesus could have defended himself. Right. So he just, watch what he does here in this text. When we look at it, we know that this is the time right after they went out to the garden. We remember this is right before they had went out to the garden, and Peter was out there, and they had took Jesus. They came to arrest Jesus. And what they did was, when they got ready to arrest Jesus, Peter pulled his sword and cut off a man's ear. And this man that he cut off his ear, Jesus healed this man's ear. This was the last miracle that Jesus had done. So when he healed this man, because if he hadn't healed this man, perhaps there would have been 4 on the cross instead of 3, because Jesus healed this man, because Peter would have been guilty and he would have been charged for cutting off this man's ear. So here we know that Jesus healed this man's ear, and the thing about it, Peter was fighting the only way physically that he know how to fight. But Jesus said, put up the sword. There's a new way. There's a new kingdom. There's another kingdom that's not of this world. I don't fight with knives here. I don't fight. I fight with the sword of the Spirit. Ephesians chapter 6. He's talking about we're fighting a new way now. So he said, my kingdom, told Pilate, my kingdom is not of this world. And the thing about it, when they got ready to put Jesus on trial, Jesus really had an unfair trial. You see, what they did was try to gather the people at night. So they went to Annas' house. Annas was the former high priest, and what he was, he had influence on the people. So when they took him to Annas' house, he questioned him and tried to interrogate him. And then after they took him from Annas' house. They took him to the active high priest, which is Caiaphas, and now they took him there. And the thing about it, they were taking him from judgment hall to judgment hall. And Annas, you see, Annas, and not only Annas, but Caiaphas, what they done, they were not able to have a capital punishment, so they wasn't able to kill Jesus like they wanted to. In the trial that you have at night, you can't have a capital punishment for the trial at night. It has to be in the morning. And what happened was, Pilate was there. Pilate was there. Usually when there's a big event like the Passover, so Pilate had to be there because somebody might rise up like Barabbas and try to revolt against Rome. So here they needed somebody there at the location that was there, and that was Pilate. So they said, let's take him to Pilate. So now watch him. Watch them take him from place to place. And you know, even when they were there with Caiaphas, they just mistreated Jesus. You know, what they did was put, perhaps put a bag over his head, and somebody would punch him and say, who did it? Prophesy. You're a prophet. Who did it? Doing all kind of things to Jesus. And we want to see here what all the things. And I know a lot of times people only preach this around Easter or whatever they call other time of the year, but we preach Christ crucified all year round. So here we see the story here that as they was taken from place to place. And let's look at our text here. Let's look at here in verses number, look what he said in verse number 22, 23, John 18, 23, 22 rather. He said, when they had spoken of the officers which stood by, struck Jesus with the palm of his hand, saying, answer the high priest. So Jesus answered him, if I had spoken evil, bear witness of the evil. But if well, why smittest thou me? What you hitting me for? I mean, they didn't have no right to be hitting him. He hadn't done nothing wrong, and it was wrong for them to be hitting him. But the idea is, now Annas had sent him bound unto Caiaphas. Now that's the acting high priest, the high priest. And Simon Peter stood warming himself. Now you got to be careful when you warm yourself by the devil's fire, because you will get burnt. So here, Peter, you remember Peter, you said, I would never deny Christ. But here we're going to see here, we talked on last Sunday night, Simon Peter stood and warned himself. They said, therefore unto him, art thou also one of his disciples? He denied it and said, I am not. Peter, Jesus had already predicted that Peter would deny him 3 times before the cock crowed. So here, this is the first time. And then it goes on to say here, one of the servants of the high priest being the kinsman. So now if you cut off somebody's cousin's ear, they just about don't remember you. So in other words, he said here, one of the kinsmen whose ear Peter cut off said, did not I see thee in the garden with him? So watch what he said. Peter denied again. And you can imagine here. Now watch this. Peter denied again. Immediately the cock crew. So in other words, the very thing that Jesus had told Peter, he did. He denied Christ. I would never, and he tried to stand up for him in the garden by cutting off the ear. But now here, we see, no matter who you are, you can fall. You can fall from grace. And the thing about it, I remember how when Jesus got up and he said, go tell the disciples and Peter. And let him know that, Peter, I still forgive you. Peter, I still concerned about you. When we fall, it's not about trying to stomp on somebody when they fall. It's about restoration, putting them back where they need to be. Jesus already knew this. This is what it meant when he said, but Satan had desired to have you, and to sift you as wheat. But I have prayed for you here, Jesus prayed for Peter. And when he prayed for him, Peter would have the strength to one day to be willing to die for Christ. So the story goes on to say here, then led they Jesus from Caiaphas unto the hall of judgment. It was early, and they themselves went not into the judgment hall, lest they should be defiled, but that they might eat the Passover. Now I want you to see this. They worried about not being defiled for the Passover, but yet they finna kill the Son of God. Yeah. Well, what do you mean by that? Sometimes we can get caught up and so and on our everyday responsibility about this is what on the outside about what's really right, and we forget about the most important thing is love. Some people say, well, I go to church, I don't smoke, I don't drink, but what about if you got a bad attitude? You see, we don't think about stuff like that. What about if you don't treat somebody right? So this is the picture that's being shown here. They worried about being defiled, coming before being defiled for the Passover, and here they is, they got murder in their heart. They want to kill Jesus. Not only that, they want to kill the Son of God. You see, Jesus wanted them to see that sometimes we can look at the way Jesus, I like the way Jesus said in Matthew 23 and 24. This is the way Jesus said in Matthew 23 and 24. He said that sometimes we swing at a gnat and swallow a camel. We pick at the small thing and forget what's really important. We want to swing at little things, or nitpick at things, and we don't worry about the most important thing. So Jesus said it like this. When you look at Matthew's chapter, I believe it is chapter 23, and look at verse number 24, and this is what we have to be very careful about when we are Christians. Let's not get hung up on the small thing and forget the big picture. Matthew 23 and verse number 24, what does the Bible say? Blind guy, read. Swings. You know how small a gnat is? You swinging at a gnat and you swallow it, and you know how big a camel is. Yeah, a camel usually bigger than a horse. About the same size. I remember trying to ride one time, and the idea is there's some big animal, but he was making this illustration. We get hung up on the small things, and we miss the big picture. They was worried about being defiled, and here they is in the heart wanting to kill Jesus. Can you see that? Yeah. So that's what Jesus is saying here. Let's be careful about these things. So here, let's go back to our text. In John chapter 18, verse number 29. Pilate then went out unto them and said, what accusation? What's the charge? What y'all bringing? You see, if a police will arrest you, they got to have a charge. They can say, I'm arresting you just because I want to arrest you. Because usually, if they stop you, you want to know, what did I do? In other words, what are you charging me for? And what's going to be on the documents? What are you charging me for? So here, Pilate asked them. He said, what's the charge? And look at the way they did. Watch what they did. What they did here. Watch what they did. What accusation bring ye against this man? At least he's trying to be fair about it. Now, if you're going to charge somebody, because this is capital punishment. This is a man's life. That's it. And that's with any about the idea is when you are going to put somebody to death, you need to understand why are they being put to death. So he said, what's the accusation? They answered and said unto him, if he were not a malefactor, take our word for it. You see what I mean? Just take our word for it. He a criminal. Jesus hadn't killed nobody. But the idea is they are accusing him. What they're really accusing him was blasphemers and others. But the charge as a criminal, they was charging him as a criminal, and he was not a criminal. Malefactor, which means that he was a criminal. So watch what they said here. We would not have delivered him up unto thee. We wouldn't have brought him to you if he hadn't did something. You just go ahead and charge him and go ahead and let's try to have him killed. We want him to be killed. That's all we want from you. Watch what he does. The thing about it, there's a backdrop on Pilate. Pilate had somewhat been in some trouble with Rome as well, because he tried to, according to history, he tried to build an aqueduct, and he took some of the money from the temple and had people that had caused a disturbance, and all these things were going up against Pilate, and Pilate is trying to keep down confusion, kind of like a politician. He's trying to satisfy everybody without getting his hands dirty. Now that's what he's trying to do. So watch what Pilate does, because Pilate have to be real careful, because there's something about the conscience that would sometimes bother you, because even Pilate's wife had said, I have dreamed of this man that he's innocent, and had told him of a dream. I've heard many things about. So Pilate was somewhat reluctant about this anyway. So keep in mind that when you're trying to do what's right, some things may be on your conscience about what you're doing, whether it's right or wrong. And watch why Pilate try to weave his way out of this. Watch him now, watch him. First of all, he said, what's the charge, first of all? Then he goes on to say here, then he usually said here in verse number 31. Then said Pilate unto them, take ye him and judge him according to your law. Sometimes you want to pass the buck. You bring to me, he's a Jew. You got a law. What about your law? In their law, they were able to stone or whatever. According to your law, you got a law. Why don't you judge him? You bring him to me, putting the pressure on me. Why don't you judge him? You have a law. The Jews therefore said unto him, is it not lawful for us to put any man to death? See, they couldn't carry out capital punishment evidently, but when they were able to, under the Old Testament law, they could stone. But now they want Jesus dead, and they want the government or the Roman to put him to death. So watch it. You see how when you hate somebody and you just want them dead and don't have really no evidence, it's just the idea that Jesus was teaching the truth, and the thing about it, they didn't like it. So they want to destroy it. Then it goes on to say here, the Jews therefore said unto him, is it not lawful for us to put away a man to death, that the saying of Jesus might be fulfilled, which he spake, signifying the death he should die. Notice here, in verses number 33, then Pilate entered into the judgment hall again and called Jesus and said unto him, art thou the king of the Jews? So he's interrogating. You know how you try to question somebody and get an answer out of them. So you want to know. He's wanting to know here. He's trying to ask him questions. And look what Jesus. And a lot of times I like to watch this verse 48. You ever see that show, verse 48? Where these people, when they don't want to say nothing, what they do is lawyer up. Yeah. Well, Jesus didn't need to lawyer up. Why? Because he's the greatest counselor. And Jesus knows how to handle his case. Jesus is the best lawyer. He's the best doctor. So in other words, Jesus can handle himself. So Jesus didn't lawyer up. So watch this. I like the way the Bible calls it in some text that he's a counselor. In Isaiah 28 and 29, he's trained to give the right answer. And then usually the trial lawyer is called a counselor. So Jesus knows how to handle a trial, give his own trial. So here, and also in Jeremiah 32 and 19 talks about he's a counselor. So here, Jesus in this sense know how to answer every question. So watch what he does. Watch what he does. He goes on to say here, then Pilate entered into the judgment hall again and called Jesus and said unto him, art thou the King of the Jews? Jesus answered, sayest thou this thing of thyself, or did some other tell you thee of me? Are you asking me this question for real, or somebody just told you about me? So Jesus is somewhat putting him on trial, if you will. Pilate answered, am I a Jew? In other words, saying, I'm not a Jew. Am I a Jew? Thy own nation and the chief priest have delivered thee unto me. What hast thou done? Your own people brought you to me. That's what Pilate is telling Jesus. The Jews and the high priest, your own people have brought you to me. Am I a Jew? Of course not. He was saying, it was a while that bringing you to me, and I'm not a Jew. They have a law, and they have a custom that they, and Pilate simply just sharing with him and trying to reason and understand what's going on here. So, what he's really trying to find out is Jesus trying to rise up against Rome, against the power, against the emperor. That's all Pilate wanted to know. He ain't worried about this religious stuff. That ain't his concern. So watch this, watch this. Jesus answered, now watch what Jesus said. My kingdom is not of this world. That's what put Pilate at ease. I'm not worried about Rome. I'm not trying to get over to no land. I'm not trying to get over to a property or territory or geographical. And that's not my concern. That's not what I come here for. My kingdom is out of this world. My kingdom exists out of this world. I don't have to rule over nothing right here. I don't need Rome. I don't need Africa. I don't need none of these geographical locations right here. That's what I came to rule over. See, we often say a kingdom consists of four things. King, territory, subjects, and law. Jesus is saying, I don't need Muskogee. I don't need Tulsa. I don't need locations like we have here. That's not my kingdom is not of this world. And that's what we got to understand as Christians. We are in the world as a location, but we shouldn't be of the world. What do you mean about that? What do you mean? What do you mean? Watch this. Look for me. In John chapter 15 and verse number 19. John chapter 15 and verse number 19. John 15, 19. Just flip back a few chapters. John chapter 15 and verse number 19. Look what it says right here. John 15, 19. What does the Bible say?
If you were of the world.
If you were of the world, what?
The world would love his own.
You see, that's why many times the world cannot accept you. If you don't go along with the crowd, let's go along, let's do this. We are in this world as a location, but we shouldn't be of this world. We should live like the world lives. Read.
But because ye are not of the world.
Because you are not of the world, what?
But I have chose you out of the world.
I have chose you out of the world, what?
Therefore the world hates you.
You see, when you start telling people what's right and wrong, your popularity might not be as well as the other folks. That's real. That's a realist. You see, people like to go along, I want to, let's go and do this, let's do this, let's go and have some fun. And when you say, well, I don't do those things, I don't get involved in those things like this, I'm not of the world. And people will start looking at you funny. Oh, you must think you somebody. You don't mean anybody else treat you like that. I'm not saying that. That's just things that I don't do, because some things that I try to stay away from, because I know what the end gonna come to. When people try to say, well, let's go and let's get high, let's get us some drugs and all. I'm not of the world. I don't need this kind of stuff to be happy. I can be happy without this kind of stuff.
Right.
You don't go along with me and say, well, we ain't gonna fool with you. You go on and you'll swear you Miss Goody Two-Shoe, go ahead on, because you ever seen this little Halo commercial where they go ahead, they make good choices. That's what it's about, making good choices. And if people want to make bad choices, you pray for them, do everything you can to help them. But the idea is, don't follow along with the world and what they want to do. John 17 and verse number 14. Look at John chapter 17 and verse number 14. We are in this world, but we're not of this world. Read.
I have given thee thy word.
I have given thee thy word, what?
And the world has hate them.
And the world have hate them. Read.
Because they are not of the world.
Were you in your lesson this morning?
Yep.
About Peter, them preaching the truth, and they hated them, they put them in prison for telling the truth. But God can deliver you out of prison, in a sense, out of bondage. Sin is bondage, and God can deliver us out of that. Yep. Open the doors up for us. Not in the literal, you can do it if you want to in the literal sense too, but the idea is, in the spiritual sense, God can open up the doors for us. Get us out of the stuff we in. Read.
Even as I am not of the world.
Even as I am not of the world. Look at 1 John chapter 2 in verse number 15. 1 John chapter 2 in verse number 15. And somebody go ahead and get Romans 12 and 2. And we'll be about ready to come to an end here. Romans 12 2. But let's look at 1 John chapter 2 and verse number 15. 1 John 2:15. What does the Bible say in 1 John 2:15?
Love not the world.
Love not the world. Read.
Neither the things that are in the world.
Neither the things that are in the ways of people and the ways things people do of the world. Don't love those things. The way they live. Hatred and bickering and fighting and politics. All that stuff is of the world. Read.
If any man love the world.
If any man love the world, read.
The love of the Father is not in him.
The love of the Father is not in him. Read.
For all that is in the world.
For all that are in the world, what?
The lust of the flesh.
The lust of the flesh, what?
And the lust of the eye.
And that's what he said. The lust of the flesh. The lust. That's what got Eve in trouble. The lust of the flesh. The lust of the eye. In the pride of life. It'll get you in trouble every time. So here, one more passage, and we'll move on. Look for me, if you will. We'll look in verse in Romans chapter 12 and verse number 2. I think Paul is saying, be not conformed to the world, but be transformed by the renewing of the mind. I think that first Romans 12:2, I believe it is.
Do not be conformed to this world.
Don't be, that's what I mean by we're in the world, but don't conform to the world. Don't be of the world. Read.
Be transformed.
See, your mind, we shouldn't think like the world thinks. We should think spiritual. We should think about the fruits of the Spirit. Love, joy, and peace. The world will be thinking hatred, outdo somebody, compete against somebody, that's what really is happening even in politics. Folk, you ever see how these folk do? Whenever they get ready to run a campaign, they try to find all the bad stuff they're advertising. Well, they find something. Y'all don't care what. They gonna find something because that's the way the world works. They're trying to undermine people to say this is a bad person. I don't care who's running for office. If you look deep enough, you're gonna find something on everybody. Amen. When you can. Dig deep enough, you can find some stuff on anybody because I know everybody has seen it. So you can't say that's what that's their way of winning. You don't need to vote for him because he did all this stuff and they probably did something worse than that. You just don't know about it. Amen. When you can. Read on.
By the renewing of your mind.
by the renewing of your mind, read.
That you may prove what is that good
Well, that you may prove that is what good, what?
and acceptable and perfect will of God.
Acceptable and perfect will of God. Now watch this. That's good enough. Now watch this. I want to show you this. And this is me. Pilate here, they wanted Barabbas. You see, the thing about it, when you want Barabbas, the question is, what are you going to do with Jesus? Barabbas wanted to send Jesus, Pilate wanted to send Jesus away. He tried to wiggle out of it every way he could. Pilate said, why not? He's a Jew. The thing about it, his way out of it is he even whipped Jesus. Had him whipped, thinking that they would let him go after they whipped him. There's a Chinese teacher. It's called Confucius. And Confucius talks about, and he defines a coward as somebody that knows what's right and won't do it. I think he really defined Pilate. Pilate knew, and he even said it. This man, I find no fault in him. Pilate said it, and he could have did. I know it was already prophesied, but he had the power to release Jesus. But you know what? Many times folks like to send Jesus away to somebody else. And the world like to choose the things of the world many times than to choose Jesus. They wanted Barabbas instead of Jesus. Send Jesus away. Let Barabbas go free. Let you know the world is choosing something evil instead of something right. What else? Watch this. In the book of Genesis, when Adam sinned, he brought thorns and thistles. You remember he had to work hard. You know, before he sinned, he would just had to dress the garden. But after he sinned, he brought thorns and thistles. Cain people was entrepreneurs. They built metal. They went so far into trying to be successful until they left God aside, and that's how they were successful when it comes to tangible things that material things. They had plenty of those things. Now watch this. Sin brought thorns and thistles, and sin brought this metal that Cain was the one that created, that took the materials and made metals like plows and all this thing to farm with and things like that. So they brought, now watch this. This brought sin into the world. But when Jesus left you, this was kind of amazing. There was some thorns, thistles. There was metal, iron, nailed in his hand. Jesus carried out the sin. Man sinned and brought these things in. Jesus went to the cross and carried them out. When they beat Jesus, it was fitting that he had some thistles, those thorns that Adam had when he sinned and made it hard. So the sins of the world was upon Jesus. All the sins of it, and that's a heavy load to carry. When folks do something for you simple, we ought to certainly be thankful when what Jesus had done. Oh, I was in a restaurant the other day, and somebody just came up and paid for my dinner, and all the dinners I had, and just paid for them. And I thought that was amazing. And I just thought well of it. And I wanted to do, come on, take, no, I don't do what I do. But they did it, and no, I want, this is a blessing. God bless, that's a blessing for you. And I just took it as a blessing. But what I'm trying to get you to see, when people do things like that, I appreciate it. But God did so much more. We can be thankful for the simple thing, but what about the greatest thing? We talked the other week. The greatest gift have already been given when Jesus died on the cross. That's what ought to make us appreciate what God had done. If we could just understand the suffering and the cause and the price of sin, we really wouldn't want to sin as much. That was a major price that was paid for sin. I don't make me say, I'm going to try my best not to ever see it anymore. Because the price was paid. Jesus paid that price, that you can be free. And that's what's important today. All of us can give the gift of love. Mm-hmm. Treat people right, no matter who they are. A lot of times, we talk about how that many times, sometimes people can treat everybody else right in the world and not even treat their own family right. Amen. We have to be careful. We're swinging at a gnat and swallowing a camel. We have to be who we are all the time. Be real. And even when people don't appreciate you helping them and trying to do what's right, everybody's not, and some people are mean. Even you do good. You saw that this morning. When people do good things, people are mean and hateful toward people that do things that are right. But you live the life because you know where your reward is coming. That's why it's so important, is to stay in the faith, stay with God, and never give up. Because God, we're singing that song this morning, where the soul of man never dies. When you talk about how the home of the soul, our soul is going somewhere we leave here. Best thing we could ever do is to be right with God. Hear the gospel, Romans 10:17, believe with all your heart, Hebrews 11:6. Repent of your sin, Luke 13:3. Confess that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, Matthew 10:32. Be willing to be baptized, go to Acts 2:38. For Peter preached the first gospel sermon to the foot on the day of Pentecost. Peter preached that gospel sermon, told the people how they had killed Jesus, how they had the very people that we talked about this morning, the high priests and the leaders, they killed Jesus and crucified him. And when they found out that, they wondered, what must I do to be saved? So repent and be baptized, every one of you, for the remission of your sins. We can repent today, and we can get on the path. The right path is to follow Jesus today. While we stand and sing some of the invitation, will you come?